Reeves raised an eyebrow. You arranged this without consulting us. I'm keeping our options open, Reed replied unapologetically. The fewer people who know the details, the better. Rather than being offended, Reeves seemed almost approving. A prudent approach. When is this rendezvous scheduled? 18 hours from now, in the Carthus asteroid belt. Neutral territory, minimal hegemony presence. Reed turned to Lyra. Will you be strong enough to travel by then? She nodded, determination evident in her posture despite her still recovering condition. The medical team says my bioelectric field has stabilized completely. I'm cleared for travel. Then we should begin preparations immediately, Reeves decided. I'll arrange for a Cerberus vessel to transport you to the rendezvous point, one with enhanced stealth capabilities to minimize detection risk. Reed shook his head. We'll take the Windward. Its transponder signature has been modified, and Vex knows to look for us on a Cerberus vessel now. We'll have a better chance traveling independently. There was a brief moment of tension as Reeves considered this, clearly not entirely comfortable with Reed and Lyra leaving Cerberus protection. But after a moment he nodded. Very well. But we'll provide you with emergency communication protocols and coordinates for safe locations throughout the sector, in case you need assistance. He stood, preparing to leave. And I'll ensure the genetic masking agent is ready before your departure. After Reeves left, Lyra turned to Reed, her expression troubled. You didn't mention your contingency plans to me either. Contacting Juno? No, Reed admitted. I needed to be certain she was available and willing before involving anyone else. That's not my point, Lyra said. We're supposed to be partners in this. Making unilateral decisions puts both of us at risk. Reed had the grace to look slightly abashed. After years of operating alone, the habit of keeping his own counsel was deeply ingrained. You're right. It won't happen again. She studied him for a moment, then nodded, accepting the apology. This friend of yours, Juno, how well do you know her? We served together in the Frontier Rangers before I joined the hegemony military, Reed explained. Independent peacekeeping force, mostly handling border disputes and piracy issues in the Outer Rim. She saved my life twice during those years. There's no one I trust more for something like this. And she's willing to risk entering a station that's crawling with hegemony security just as a favor to you. Reed smiled slightly. I may have offered her exclusive shipping rights to the Denarian trade routes I secured 3 years ago. They're quite lucrative. Despite the seriousness of their situation, Lyra found herself laughing. A genuine, uninhibited sound that Reed realized he hadn't heard from her before. It transformed her features, making her seem younger, less burdened by the weight of her fugitive status. You continue to surprise me, Commander Reed, she said, her luminescent veins pulsing slightly brighter with her amusement. Just when I think I have you figured out. I'll take that as a compliment, he replied, finding himself smiling in return. It was a strange moment of lightness amidst the danger surrounding them, a reminder that there was more to both of them than their current predicament. The moment was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Isan, who came to conduct Lyra's final examination before clearing her for travel. Reed excused himself, heading to the docking bay where the Windward was undergoing final maintenance checks. Vex was at the ship, running diagnostics on the engines and other critical systems. The damage sustained during their escape from the Obsidian Dawn had been repaired, and several systems had been enhanced by Cerberus technicians, with Reed's careful supervision to ensure no tracking or monitoring devices were installed. All systems optimal, Commander, Vex reported as Reed approached. Cerberus technicians are surprisingly competent. They've increased our shield harmonics efficiency by 12% without compromising power distribution. Any unexpected modifications? Reed asked, still not entirely trusting their hosts despite the help they'd provided. Negative. I monitored all work performed and conducted independent verification of all systems afterward. There was a pause before Vex added. However, I did detect a passive data gathering attempt when they connected to our navigation system. Reed frowned. What were they after? Previous destinations, primarily. I provided sanitized data as per your standing protocols. It wasn't surprising that Cerberus would attempt to gather intelligence while ostensibly helping them. Information was currency in their line of work, and knowing Reed's previous movements might give them insights into his connections and resources. Keep all systems isolated once we depart, Reed instructed, and prepare for launch in 4 hours. We're meeting Juno at the Carthus coordinates. Acknowledged. Ms. Reese's vessel is a neutral signature in our database. Shall I update it to friendly status? Yes, and begin calculating multiple departure vectors from the rendezvous point. I want options depending on how the exchange goes. As Reed continued preparations for their departure, a notification came through on his personal communicator. A message from Reeves requesting his presence in the facility's secure communication center. Curious and slightly wary, he made his way there. The communication center was a heavily shielded room at the heart of the facility, designed to prevent any signal interception or electronic surveillance. Reeves was waiting, along with a holographic projection of a woman Reed immediately recognized despite never having met her in person. Commander Reed, Reeves began, I thought you should be part of this briefing. This is Captain Nera Kinseth, transmitting from our medical facility in the Theseus system. Kinseth looked considerably worse for wear than when Reed had last seen her aboard the Obsidian Dawn. A healing wound was visible on her temple, and her left arm was secured in a medical stabilizer. But her eyes were as sharp and assessing as ever. Commander, she greeted him. I'm pleased to see you, and Ms. Vosh made it to safety. Likewise, Captain, Reed replied. Your crew paid a high price for helping us. A shadow crossed her face. They knew the risks. As did I. She turned slightly, addressing both Reed and Reeves. But I didn't arrange this communication to discuss the past. We have new intelligence concerning Inquisitor Vex that you need to be aware of. She activated a secondary holographic display showing the Hegemony military facility. This is the Tartarus complex on Eris Prime, one of the Hegemony's classified research and development centers. Our sources indicate that Vex has requisitioned an experimental tracking system housed there, technology specifically designed to detect and isolate unique genetic signatures across vast distances. Reed felt a chill at the implications. They're creating a way to track Lyra directly, regardless of her bioelectric suppression. Precisely, Kinseth confirmed grimly. If they succeed, no amount of shielding or suppression will be sufficient. They'll be able to locate her anywhere in the sector. How close are they to deploying this technology? Reeves asked. Too close. The system requires calibration to Lyra's specific genetic pattern, which they have from their research records. Our intelligence suggests they're in the final testing phase. Once operational, they could deploy it within days. Reed's mind raced through the implications. Their plan to retrieve the enzyme from Novaria suddenly seemed insufficient. Even if they secured it, the Hegemony would still be able to track Lyra herself, the living key to the formula. We need to neutralize this tracking system before it becomes operational, he said, the decision forming even as he spoke. Otherwise, no matter where we go, Vex will find us. Kinseth nodded. That was my assessment as well. Unfortunately, the Tartarus complex is one of the most secure facilities in Hegemony space. A direct assault would be suicide. What about cyber infiltration? Reeves suggested. If we could access their systems remotely. The facility operates on an isolated network. Kinseth cut him off. No external connections. Any infiltration would have to be physical. Reed considered the problem from all angles, drawing on his military experience and knowledge of Hegemony security protocols. What if we don't need to infiltrate the facility itself? Just disrupt the tracking system during calibration. Both Kinseth and Reeves looked at him with interest. Explain, Kinseth prompted. You said the system requires calibration to Lyra's specific genetic pattern. That calibration process is the vulnerability. If we could introduce a corrupted genetic sample into their system during calibration, it would render the entire tracking system inoperable. Reeves finished, understanding dawning. Or worse, from their perspective, it would appear functional but provide false results. Exactly, Reed confirmed. And disrupting a calibration process would require far less access than attacking the facility directly. Kinseth's expression was thoughtful. The calibration process would likely involve external testing, controlled releases of the target genetic signature to verify tracking capability at increasing distances, creating an opportunity for intervention, Reed concluded. It's possible, she acknowledged, but would still require someone to get close enough to interfere with the testing without being detected. The security around any hegemony test site would be substantial. I'll handle that part, Reed said with quiet determination, but we need to know exactly when and where these calibration tests will take place. Kinseth nodded. I'll direct our intelligence assets to prioritize this information. In the meantime, proceed with your plan to recover the enzyme from Noveria. Having it secure remains critical, regardless of our next steps. The communication concluded with arrangements for secure contact protocols once Kinseth had the information they needed. As the hologram disappeared, Reed turned to Reeves. This changes things, he said. We need to accelerate our timeline. Reeves nodded, his expression grave. I'll ensure the genetic masking agent is ready within the hour. And Commander, he hesitated briefly before continuing, I believe it's time to fully commit to working together. The stakes have become too high for divided efforts. Reed studied the man carefully. Despite his initial skepticism about Cerberus, the past days had demonstrated both their capabilities and their genuine concern about the hegemony's activities. And now, with the threat of an unblockable tracking system targeting Lyra, they needed every resource available. Agreed, he said finally. But I lead the operation to disrupt the tracking system. My background gives me the best chance of success. No objections there, Reeves assured him. Cerberus provides support, intelligence, and resources. You provide the expertise in field operations. They sealed the agreement with a firm handshake, and Reed departed to inform Lyra of the new developments. He found her in her quarters, already packing the few possessions she had acquired during their stay. You look concerned, she observed as he entered. What's happened? Reed explained the situation. The experimental tracking system, their accelerated timeline, and the need to disrupt the calibration process before the system became fully operational. Lyra listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly troubled. When he finished, she was silent for a long moment before speaking. So even if we recover the enzyme, they'll still be able to track me directly, she summarized. I'll never be safe, no matter where I go or what precautions I take. Not if we can disrupt the tracking system during calibration, Reed emphasized. That's why timing is critical. We need to move quickly. She nodded, visibly processing the new threat. And Juno, your courier friend, she's still our best option for retrieving the enzyme from Noveria. Yes, that plan remains unchanged. We'll rendezvous with her, provide the genetic masking agent and necessary information, then proceed to wherever the calibration testing is taking place, which means splitting our focus at a critical time. Lyra noted, concern evident in her voice. If anything goes wrong with either operation, it won't, Reed assured her with more confidence than he truly felt. Juno is the best at what she does, and I have experience with hegemony security protocols that gives us an advantage for the tracking system disruption. Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded decisively. Then we should leave immediately. The sooner we meet your courier, the sooner we can focus on stopping this tracking system. Their departure from the Cerberus facility 3 hours later was conducted with maximum security protocols. The Windward, its systems enhanced and fully repaired, slipped away from the asteroid base with minimal energy signature, using the nebula's natural radiation to mask its trajectory until it was well clear of the area. Reed piloted while Lyra monitored the ship's sensors for any sign of pursuit or surveillance. The Cerberus medical team had provided her with a new portable bioelectric stabilizer. more advanced than the one she had used previously, capable of masking her signature completely when activated at full power. No signs of tracking or pursuit, she reported after they had been underway for an hour. Course to the Karthus rendezvous is clear. Reed nodded, allowing himself to relax slightly. We should arrive on schedule. Juno will be waiting. Lyra was silent for a moment, then asked the question that had been bothering her since learning of the new threat. What happens if we fail? If the hegemony completes the tracking system before we can disrupt it? It was a possibility Reed had been trying not to dwell on, but one they needed to consider. Then we implement contingency plans. There are places beyond hegemony reach, deep space stations, unaffiliated worlds in the outer rim. Not comfortable, but survivable. A lifetime of running, Lyra said quietly. Always looking over my shoulder, never staying in one place long enough to build anything resembling a normal life. The resignation in her voice troubled Reed more than he expected. Over their relatively short acquaintance, he had come to respect not just Lyra's intelligence and abilities, but her resilience, her refusal to surrender despite overwhelming odds. That won't happen, he said firmly. We'll stop the tracking system, recover the enzyme, and find a permanent solution. I promise you that. She looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, something between hope and skepticism. You're placing a lot of faith in our chances against the most powerful government in the sector. I've learned that large organizations have inherent vulnerabilities precisely because of their size and complexity, Reed replied. The hegemony isn't monolithic. It's made up of people, systems, and protocols, all of which can be exploited if you understand them well enough. And you understand them that well. I operated within them for years, he reminded her. I know how they think, how they plan, how they respond to threats. That gives us an edge they don't expect. The journey to the Karthus asteroid belt proceeded without incident, the Windward maintaining a low profile among the countless drifting rocks and debris that made the region both a perfect hiding place and a navigational challenge. Their rendezvous coordinates were in a particularly dense section, providing additional cover from any long-range scans. As they approached, Vex detected another vessel already waiting, a small, nondescript transport ship with minimal weaponry but powerful engines. Its design was common among independent couriers who valued speed and maneuverability over combat capability. The Swift Passage, Reed identified. Jumo's ship, she's maintaining communication silence as arranged. Prepare for docking. The two vessels maneuvered carefully among the asteroids, eventually establishing a temporary docking seal between their airlocks. Reed secured the Windward systems before heading to the airlock, Lyra following close behind. The inner door cycled open to reveal a woman matching the holographic image Reed had shown earlier. Juno Reese, with her sharp features and confident bearing. She stood slightly shorter than Reed, but carried herself with the unmistakable alertness of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. Darius Reed. She greeted him with a hint of a smile. Still finding trouble in the most spectacular ways, I see. It has a way of finding me, he replied, stepping forward to clasp her arm in a gesture of greeting that spoke of their shared history. Thank you for coming. Your message mentions significant compensation and moderate risk, she said dryly. Based on experience, I'm expecting minimal compensation and extreme risk. We'll discuss terms inside, Reed suggested, gesturing toward the Windward's interior. This is Lyra Vosh, my associate. Juno studied Lyra with open curiosity. A Cerulean. That explains the hegemony's interest. They've always been fascinated by your species' abilities. She extended a hand in greeting. A pleasure, Ms. Vosh. Lyra accepted the handshake, her own expression evaluative. Likewise, Reed speaks highly of your skills. He'd better, considering what I've pulled him out of over the years, Juno replied with a smirk. She followed them into the Windward's common area, where Reed had prepared the briefing materials for the operation. Once they were settled, Reed outlined the situation. The enzyme hidden on Novaria Station, the increased security, and the genetic masking agent Juno would need to retrieve it. So I go in, posing as a routine courier with legitimate business on the station. Juno summarized. Access the maintenance sector. Use this genetic mask to open the biometric lock, retrieve the enzyme container, and exit without drawing attention. All while hegemony forces are actively searching for anything connected to you too. That's the essence of it. Yes, Reed confirmed. The genetic mask will only work for approximately 10 minutes after application, so timing will be critical. Juno considered this. Security checkpoints increased throughout the station, especially in the main concourses, Reed said, displaying a station schematic with security positions marked. But the maintenance sectors are still relatively unmonitored. Station function requires technician access, and they can't afford to disrupt essential services. Entry point. Service Docking Bay 12. It's used primarily for supply ships servicing the environmental systems. Your ship profile is already cleared for that category in most station registries. A small adjustment to your transponder should be sufficient. Juno nodded, studying the schematics carefully. And if I encounter resistance? Reed handed her a small, unobtrusive device. Sonic disruptor, low frequency. It will temporarily disorient most humanoid species without causing permanent damage or triggering standard security sensors. Use it only if absolutely necessary. Extraction plan. Same as entry. Once you have the enzyme, return to your ship and depart using routine supply vessel protocols. We'll rendezvous at these coordinates. Reed displayed a new set of coordinates in a neighboring system. A small, uninhabited moon with enough electromagnetic interference to mask the transfer. Juno absorbed all the information with professional efficiency, asking clarifying questions about security rotations, identification protocols, and contingency options if primary routes were blocked. Reed answered each with the detailed knowledge of someone who had planned covert operations for years. Finally, Juno leaned back, apparently satisfied. Timeline. You should reach Novaria in approximately 30 hours. The operation itself should take no more than 2 hours from docking to departure. We'll be at the rendezvous point 12 hours after that. And my compensation? Juno asked, raising an eyebrow. Reed smiled slightly. The Denarian shipping routes as discussed, plus this. He placed a data chip on the table between them. Backdoor access codes to the hegemony's automated customs systems at 6 major transit hubs. They'll classify your vessel as priority diplomatic status, bypassing standard inspection protocols. Juno's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of her surprise at the value of what he was offering. Such access would be worth a fortune to an independent courier, saving time and avoiding the harassment that often came with hegemony customs inspections. Where did you get these? She asked, unable to hide her curiosity. I had some time on my hands before leaving hegemony service, Reed replied vaguely. Let's just say they were insurance I never expected to need. Juno picked up the chip, examining it briefly before securing it in an inner pocket. Acceptable terms. I'll retrieve your package and meet you at the rendezvous coordinates. She rose to leave, then paused, looking between Reed and Lyra. Whatever you two are involved in has the hegemony extremely agitated. Security bulletins about you are being updated hourly, with increasingly dramatic warnings about public safety threats. We've noticed, Lyra said dryly. Just be careful, Juno advised. I've never seen them devote this level of resources to capturing fugitives. Not even political dissidents get this kind of attention. All the more reason to recover the enzyme quickly, Reed said. The sooner it's secure, the fewer options the hegemony has. They escorted Juno back to the airlock, where she paused one final time. Darius, she said, dropping the professional demeanor briefly, watch yourself. This feels different from your usual entanglements. It is, he acknowledged. But we have a plan. She studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. You always do. Whether they work is another matter entirely. With a final nod to Lyra, she returned to her ship. As the airlock cycled closed and the docking seal disengaged, Lyra and Reed returned to the cockpit to monitor Juno's departure. The swift passage detached smoothly, its engines flaring briefly before it disappeared among the asteroids. "She seems capable," Lyra observed, "and she clearly knows you well." Reed nodded, already plotting their own departure vector. "We served together for 3 years. She was the best pilot in the Rangers, could navigate routes others considered suicide missions. If anyone can get in and out of Noveria undetected, it's Juno. And now we wait," Lyra said, settling into the co-pilot's seat, "until we hear from Captain Kinseth about the tracking system calibration." "Not exactly waiting," Reed corrected. "We need to prepare for that operation, gather equipment, develop infiltration strategies based on whatever intelligence she provides. And we should be ready to move immediately when we receive the information." The Windward disengaged from its position in the asteroid belt, taking a circuitous route toward their next destination, a small automated refueling station in neutral space where they could remain inconspicuous while awaiting Kinseth's intelligence. As they traveled, Reed began preparing for what might be their most dangerous operation yet, infiltrating a hegemony test site to disrupt technology specifically designed to hunt them down. The odds were daunting, but the alternative was unacceptable. If they failed, Lyra would never be truly free. He glanced at her, noting the determined set of her jaw as she monitored the ship's systems. Despite everything she had endured, capture, experimentation, months as a fugitive, recent injuries, she hadn't surrendered to despair or resignation. That resilience, more than anything else, convinced Reed that their cause was worth the risks they were taking. "We'll succeed," he said quietly, as much to himself as to her, "on both fronts." She looked up, meeting his gaze with eyes that held both determination and vulnerability. "We have to," she replied simply. "The alternative isn't just about us anymore. If the hegemony perfects this technology, they'll use it for more than just finding me. They'll track anyone with unique genetic signatures, political dissidents, representatives of rare species, anyone they consider valuable or threatening." It was a sobering thought, one that elevated their mission from personal survival to something with far broader implications. The hegemony's willingness to violate ethical boundaries in pursuit of power was a threat that extended beyond their immediate situation. As the Windward continued its journey through the darkness of space, Reed and Lyra settled into the focused preparation that might make the difference between success and catastrophic failure. The pieces were in motion. Juno heading to Noveria, Kinseth gathering intelligence on the tracking system calibration, Cerberus providing support from the shadows. All they could do now was ensure they were ready when the moment came to act, to take their final stand against the forces that had been hunting them across the stars. Beyond the hunt, the message from Captain Kinseth arrived 48 hours later, while Reed and Lyra were docked at the automated refueling station. Its contents were both urgent and precise, exactly what they needed. "The hegemony has established a testing ground for the tracking system on Velis IV," Reed summarized as they reviewed the intelligence in the Windward's common area. "It's a small moon in the Velis system, minimal population, classified as a restricted military zone, which means heavy security," Lyra noted, studying the satellite imagery Kinseth had provided. The testing ground was a temporary facility, a collection of prefabricated structures surrounded by a defensive perimeter of sensor arrays and automated weapons platforms. "Yes, but also isolated from major hegemony infrastructure," Reed countered. "They chose it specifically because it's remote. They don't want information about this system leaking to the public or to rival powers." He highlighted a section of the compound. "This is the calibration center, where they're processing the genetic targeting parameters. According to Kinseth's intelligence, they'll be conducting a final field test in approximately 36 hours. They'll release controlled samples of synthesized genetic material matching your profile at increasing distances to verify the tracking system's range and accuracy. Creating our opportunity to introduce corrupted samples," Lyra said, understanding the plan. But how do we get close enough? That perimeter looks formidable. Reed's expression was grimly satisfied. That's where this comes in. He activated another holographic display, showing what appeared to be a standard hegemony military transport shuttle. Cerberus has provided us with this, a perfect replica of a hegemony research vessel, including all current authentication codes. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. They can replicate hegemony vessels that convincingly. Apparently, Cerberus has been preparing for operations like this for years, Reed explained. The vessel is waiting for us at a secure location 6 hours from here. We'll transfer to it, then approach Velis IV as a scheduled research team arriving for the calibration test. Won't they verify our identities? They'll try, Reed acknowledged. But Cerberus has also created cover identities for us, complete with all the necessary genetic, biometric, and background data inserted into the hegemony's personnel systems. As far as their database is concerned, we are Dr. Elias Mercer and Dr. Nyla Varon, specialists in genetic targeting systems from the Hegemony Science Division. It was an audacious plan, not merely evading hegemony security, but walking directly into it under assumed identities. The risk was enormous, but so was the potential reward. Once we're inside the compound, Reed continued, we'll need to access the calibration lab and replace their pure samples with our corrupted versions. He indicated a container on the table, an unassuming metal case containing synthetically altered genetic material based on Lyra's DNA, but modified to produce unpredictable results when used for tracking. The corruption won't be immediately detectable, Lyra observed, having reviewed the composition of the altered samples. It will allow initial calibration to appear successful, but render the entire system unreliable in actual field operations. Exactly. By the time they realize something's wrong, the system will be deployed throughout the sector, producing false positives and phantom readings that will destroy its credibility. Reed's satisfaction was evident. They'll have to start over from scratch, a setback of months, possibly years, all of which depends on us successfully infiltrating a high-security hegemony military installation, Lyra reminded him, as the very people they're hunting most intensively throughout the sector. Reed's smile was tight but confident. High risk, high reward. And we have advantages they won't expect. Insider knowledge of their protocols, Cerberus technology, and intelligence, and most importantly, they're not looking for us to come to them. Their security is focused outward, on preventing external attack or espionage. They won't be prepared for infiltrators arriving as legitimate personnel. Lyra considered this, then nodded slowly. When do we leave? As soon as we hear from Juno that she's secured the enzyme, Reed replied. We need to know that objective is accomplished before we risk the Velis operation. The waiting was perhaps the hardest part. Hours of tense silence as they monitored communications channels for word from Juno. Reed occupied himself with meticulous review of the Velis facility schematics and security protocols, while Lyra prepared the corrupted genetic samples, ensuring they would pass initial inspection but fail catastrophically during actual tracking attempts. Finally, 30 hours after Juno's departure for Noveria, the Windward secure communication system activated with an incoming transmission. Package secured, came Juno's voice, crisp and professional. Proceeding to rendezvous coordinates, no complications to report. The relief was palpable. Half of their mission was successful. The enzyme sample was safe, out of hegemony reach. Now they could focus fully on the tracking system disruption. Acknowledged, Reed responded. We'll meet you as arranged. Safe travels. As he closed the communication channel, he turned to Lyra with renewed determination. Now we move. The Cerberus vessel is waiting, and we have a calibration test to attend. The transfer to the replica hegemony research vessel went smoothly. It was, as promised, a perfect duplicate of a standard scientific transport, down to the smallest details of interior configuration and operating systems. The Cerberus operative who had delivered it provided final authentication codes and a secure communication protocol before departing in a small stealth shuttle. Reed and Lyra changed into the appropriate Hegemony Science Division uniforms, crisp, utilitarian garments in the division's characteristic pale blue. For Lyra, this included specialized gloves and a collar device that would help mask the luminescence of her veins. Ceruleans were rare in Hegemony service, but not unheard of, particularly in scientific divisions where their natural abilities could be valuable. "How does it feel?" Reed asked as he watched her adjust the unfamiliar uniform, wearing the insignia of the people who've been hunting you. "Strange," she admitted, smoothing the fabric with a contemplative expression. "But there's a certain irony to it that I appreciate, using their own systems and protocols against them." Reed nodded, understanding the sentiment. He had experienced something similar when he first turned against the hegemony, a sense of reclaiming agency by using their own methods as weapons. "Ready?" he asked, moving to the pilot station. Lyra took the co-pilot's seat, her expression resolute. "Ready." The journey to the Velis system took just under 5 hours. They maintained radio silence except for standard automated transponder signals, their course and speed precisely matching what would be expected of a scheduled research vessel. As they approached Velis IV, Reed activated the ship's communication system. "Velis Control, this is Hegemony Science Vessel HSV 294, requesting approach vector for scheduled delivery of calibration specialists," he transmitted, his voice calm and official. There was a brief pause before a response came. "HSV 294. Transmit authorization codes and personnel manifest." Reed sent the codes Cerberus had provided, along with the fabricated personnel records identifying them as Dr. Mercer and Dr. Varon. The seconds stretched as they waited for verification, the small moon growing larger in their view screen. "HSV 294, your codes are verified. Proceed to landing pad 3. Welcome to Velis Research Station, doctors." The first hurdle cleared, Reed guided the vessel toward the designated landing area, a circular pad on the eastern edge of the compound. As they descended, they could see the facility in greater detail, a collection of interconnected structures surrounded by a perimeter of sensor arrays and automated defense platforms. Personnel moved between buildings with the purposeful efficiency of a military operation on a tight schedule. They landed with precision, powering down systems according to standard protocol. Through the viewports, they could see a small reception committee approaching, 2 security officers, and a civilian wearing the administrative insignia of a facility coordinator. "Remember," Reed said quietly as they prepared to disembark, "we're expected. We belong here. Confidence without arrogance is key." Lyra nodded, adjusting her gloves one final time. The collar device hummed softly as it regulated her bioelectric field, suppressing the natural luminescence that would make her immediately identifiable as the fugitive the hegemony was hunting. They stepped out onto the landing pad, the artificial gravity of Velis IV slightly lighter than standard, giving a subtle bounce to their movements. The air was thin but breathable, with the metallic tang common to small moons with minimal atmospheres. "Dr. Mercer, Dr. Varon," the administrator greeted them, consulting a data tablet. "I'm Coordinator Thesis. We've been expecting you. The calibration team is eager for your input on the final testing protocols." "Glad to be here," Reed replied with the slightly distracted air of a scientist focused on his work rather than social niceties. "We've reviewed the preliminary data during transit. Impressive results so far." The security officers conducted a perfunctory scan of the case, their devices registering nothing unusual about its contents. The corrupted samples were designed to appear genetically identical to the pure versions until activated under specific conditions. They followed Thesis into the facility, passing through a security checkpoint where their retinal patterns and hand geometry were scanned, both matching the fabricated records Cerberus had inserted into the hegemony database. Inside, the facility was a model of military efficiency, clean, well-organized, with personnel moving purposefully between workstations. The tracking system is performing beyond initial projections. Thesis informed them as they walked. Yesterday's tests successfully identified the target genetic signature at a range of 3.5 light minutes, far exceeding design parameters. Impressive, Lyra commented, perfectly mimicking the professional interest of a scientist. What about signal degradation in high radiation environments? Minimal. The quantum resonance matrix compensates for most interference. That's one of the system's most revolutionary features. Reed and Lyra exchanged a brief glance. The system was even more advanced than they had feared, capable of tracking Lyra across vast distances, even through traditional masking environments like nebula or radiation belts. If it became fully operational, there would truly be nowhere in the sector she could hide. They'd reached the main laboratory, a large, open space filled with advanced equipment. Holographic displays showed genetic sequences and tracking algorithms, while technicians monitored calibration processes at various workstations. At the center was the tracking system itself, a surprisingly compact array of quantum processors and specialized sensors designed to detect and isolate specific genetic patterns across vast distances. Dr. Havish, Thesis called to a serious-looking woman supervising the central workstation. Your reinforcements have arrived. Dr. Mercer and Dr. Varon from Central Research. Dr. Havish looked up, her expression a mixture of relief and professional curiosity. Excellent timing. We're preparing for the final calibration sequence. Your expertise will be invaluable. The next hour was a delicate dance of scientific consultation and subtle manipulation. Reed and Lyra integrated themselves into the calibration team, offering legitimate insights and suggestions that demonstrated their supposed expertise while looking for the opportunity to introduce their corrupted samples. The moment came when Dr. Havish announced the preparation for the final field test. We'll be releasing synthesized genetic material matching the target profile at distances of up to 5 light minutes, she explained. The tracking system will attempt to locate and identify each sample, verifying both range capabilities and precision. The purity of the test samples is critical at this stage, Lyra observed, seizing the opening. Perhaps we should verify the integrity before proceeding. The transit from Central Research gave us time to develop some enhanced verification protocols. Dr. Havish hesitated only briefly before nodding. A reasonable precaution. The test chambers are calibrated and ready. You may proceed with your verification. It was the opportunity they needed. With professional efficiency, Lyra accessed the sample storage unit while Reed engaged Dr. Havish in a technical discussion about quantum resonance patterns, drawing attention away from the subtle substitution Lyra was performing. The corrupted samples replaced the pure ones, virtually indistinguishable to standard analysis, but containing subtle genetic triggers that would cause the tracking system to produce false positives and phantom readings once deployed in actual field conditions. Samples verified, Lyra announced, closing the storage unit. All parameters within optimal range. Dr. Havish nodded with satisfaction. Then we're ready to proceed with the final calibration sequence. Once completed, the system will be ready for full operational deployment. The test proceeded with mechanical precision. Automated drones released the synthetic genetic material at predetermined distances from the tracking system, which hummed and pulsed as it detected and locked onto each sample. The corrupted nature of the samples remained undetected, just as they had planned. All targets identified and locked, a technician reported. Signal strength at 98.7% efficiency across all test ranges. Dr. Havish's expression was one of triumph. Excellent. The system is performing even better than projected. Compile the data for final review, then prepare for shutdown and transport procedures. Central Command will be most pleased. Reed and Lyra exchanged a subtle glance of relief. The substitution had worked. The calibration appeared successful, but the system was now fatally compromised. Once deployed, it would prove unreliable in actual field operations, undermining confidence in its capabilities and forcing a complete reassessment of the technology. Impressive work, Reed commented to Dr. Havish. The tracking system represents a significant advancement in detection technology. It will revolutionize our security operations, she agreed proudly. No target with the designated genetic signature will be able to evade detection, no matter where they hide in the sector. The applications extend beyond mere tracking, Lyra added, maintaining her cover while gathering additional intelligence. Have there been discussions about adapting the technology for medical applications? Genetic disorder identification, perhaps? Dr. Havish's expression cooled slightly. Those would be questions for central research, Doctor. Our mandate here is purely security-focused. The message was clear. The hegemony had no interest in beneficial applications of the technology. It was a weapon, pure and simple, designed to hunt specific targets across vast distances. Of course, Lyra acknowledged smoothly. I merely find the potential fascinating from a theoretical perspective. As the calibration team began the process of securing the system for transport, Coordinator Thesis approached them. Your arrival was fortuitously timed, doctors. With the calibration complete, perhaps you'd care to join the transport team. Central Command has requested the system be delivered directly to Hegemony Prime for final integration with the security network. It was an unexpected complication, one that would keep them in Hegemony custody far longer than planned. Reed thought quickly. Unfortunately, our transport vessel is scheduled for immediate return to the Genetech division on Proxima Station, he replied with convincing regret. We have ongoing projects that require our attention now that this phase is complete. Thesis looked disappointed, but nodded. Understood. Research schedules are always tight. We'll arrange for security personnel to handle the transport. The next hour was tense but controlled as they completed the necessary documentation and prepared for departure. Each moment in the facility increased the risk of discovery, but leaving too hastily might arouse suspicion. They maintained their professional demeanor, discussing technical details with the calibration team while gradually working toward a natural conclusion to their visit. Finally, with all protocols observed and documentation completed, they were escorted back to their vessel. The security scans were as cursory as before, their cover identities holding firm, their true purpose undetected. As the ship's systems powered up for departure, Reed maintained the calm, methodical process expected of a hegemony science vessel, his movements neither rushed nor hesitant. Velis Control, this is HSV 294 requesting clearance for departure, he transmitted. Destination: Proxima Station, Genetech Division. HSV 294, clearance granted. Transmitting departure vector now. Safe journey, doctors. The vessel lifted smoothly from the landing pad, accelerating through Velis Ivy's thin atmosphere toward open space. Neither Reed nor Lyra spoke until they were well clear of the moon's orbital monitoring range, their course set precisely as would be expected for a vessel bound for Proxima Station. Only when the navigation system confirmed they were beyond immediate tracking range did Lyra release a long breath. It worked. They suspect nothing. For now, Reed agreed, already adjusting their course to take them toward their rendezvous with Juno. Once the system is deployed and begins producing erratic results, they'll eventually trace it back to the calibration process. But by then, it will be too late. They'll have to start over from the beginning. Buying us time, Lyra said. Time to determine what to do with the enzyme and the knowledge in my head. Reed nodded, his expression thoughtful. That decision is yours to make. But at least now you'll have the freedom to make it without the hegemony hunting you across the stars. They maintained their false trajectory until they were certain no hegemony vessels were tracking them, then executed a series of course changes designed to lose any potential pursuit. The replica hegemony vessel performed perfectly, its systems responding with the same precision as a genuine military craft. 6 hours later, they arrived at the rendezvous coordinates, a small, uninhabited moon with significant electromagnetic interference that would help mask their presence. Juno's vessel, the Swift Passage, was already waiting, maintaining a low orbit on the far side of the moon. Reed guided their ship into a complementary orbit, establishing secure communication as they approached. Juno, this is Reed. Position secure. Preparing for transfer. Acknowledged, came her crisp response. I have your package. No complications to report. They docked with practiced efficiency, the two vessels establishing a temporary seal between their airlocks. Juno was waiting when the doors cycled open, a small, heavily shielded container in her hands. One enzyme sample, as requested, she announced, handing it to Reed as they moved to the common area of her ship. Biometric lock disengaged without incident. No one on the station appeared to be monitoring the maintenance sector. Any signs of increased hegemony presence on Noveria? Lyra asked. Significant, Juno confirmed. Security checkpoints at all major intersections, identification verification for all travelers, but they're focused on inbound vessels and public areas. The maintenance sectors were virtually unmonitored. They simply don't have the manpower to cover everything. Reed carefully secured the container, confirming its integrity. Inside was a small vial containing a pale blue liquid, the synthetic enzyme Lyra had developed that allowed stable genetic integration between cerulean and human DNA. It looked remarkably ordinary for something that had caused such extraordinary pursuit. With this secure and the tracking system compromised, the hegemony has lost its two primary advantages, he observed. They no longer have a way to find you directly, and they don't have the means to continue Project Ascension without starting over from scratch. Lyra studied the container thoughtfully. Not indefinitely. They still have my research data, partial samples. Given enough time and resources, they could eventually reconstruct the process. But it would take years, Reed pointed out. Years during which we can work to ensure they never get the chance to complete it. Juno looked between them with raised eyebrows. Sounds like you two have plans beyond simply evading capture. Reed and Lyra exchanged a glance, a silent communication passing between them. It was Lyra who answered. The knowledge I have, the research I developed, it has potential beyond weapons applications. It could treat genetic disorders, repair neural damage, extend human lifespans, but only if developed ethically with proper oversight. And you believe that's possible? Juno asked skeptically. In a sector dominated by powers like the hegemony and the consortium. Not alone, Reed admitted. But we're not alone anymore. Cerberus has resources, connections, the ability to operate outside traditional power structures. With their support, there's a chance to develop the beneficial applications of Lyra's research while preventing its weaponization. Juno considered this, then nodded slowly. An ambitious goal. But if anyone could manage it, I'd put my credits on you too. She smiled slightly. Just remember you have friends in less official capacities as well. The shipping lanes get lonely without the occasional high-risk favor to perform. They completed the transfer of the enzyme container to their vessel, then prepared to part ways. Juno would return to her courier routes with her newly acquired hegemony customs codes, while Reed and Lyra would rendezvous with a Cerberus vessel at predetermined coordinates. Take care of yourself, Darius, Juno said as they prepared to disengage airlocks. And you, Ms. Vosh. The sector becomes less interesting when its most wanted fugitives disappear. We're not disappearing, Reed assured her, just changing strategies. With a final farewell, they returned to their vessel and disengaged from the swift passage. As Juno's ship accelerated away, Reed set course for the Cerberus rendezvous point, a deep space location far from established trade routes or monitoring stations. What happens now? Lyra asked as they settled into hyperspace, the stars stretching into lines beyond the viewports. Assuming Cerberus holds to their promise of providing resources and protection. Reed considered the question. We establish a secure research facility, somewhere beyond hegemony reach. You continue your work under controlled conditions, focusing on the beneficial applications. Cerberus provides security and distribution channels for any treatments or therapies developed. And the hegemony? They won't simply give up their pursuit, even with the tracking system compromised and the enzymes secured. For Lyra Vosh, once hunted across the stars for the knowledge she possessed, and for Darius Reed, the commander who had chosen to stand beside her against the most powerful forces in the sector, the future held both danger and promise in equal measure. But for the first time since their journey began, the promise outweighed the danger. Beyond the hunt lay hope, and they were finally free to pursue it.